Hello and welcome to another tier list video where today we will be rating oddly cropped out tier 3 creatures of Heroes of Mana Magic 3 Horde of the Abyss. This time Cove included, neutrals included, everything is included, so let's get right into it. First up is we have the Beholder. Pretty basic unit. He's a shooter, he's also a melee guy because he has no melee penalty, decent HP, decent stats, easy accessibility. You usually get these, you're pretty happy to have them as a side stack. For me, you're actually pretty happy to make a power stack of these guys as well, because they're not bad whatsoever. I would put Beholders at solid B tier, and if you were to upgrade them into Evil Eyes, they're actually a really good power stack. Speed 7 is not the kind of low where you actually get hit a lot. For a shooter, it's kind of good. If you have one or two dwellings for these guys, they actually make a really good early game power stack. The kind of power stack that will be able to take cons, your highs and so on. They're pretty solid, pretty good. I would actually put them at A tier. I really love these guys, okay? They are cool looking, their animations are really nice, and they feel pretty good to use overall. Next up is we have the Cove tier 3 units. We have, first of all, the Pirate. The Pirate is a really solid unit. He is a really good shooter, okay? But he only has 4 shots. So they're kind of, they can't really take out the long, dragged out fights. They can by meleeing, but by that point they're not a shooter anymore. And as not a shooter, they're not that good. They're okay. I really like using these units, and I feel like they are definitely good. Good enough to at least place in high B tier in my opinion. And when you upgrade them, you get Corsairs. And Corsairs are one of my favorite units in the game, okay? At least for tier 3. They are amazing. They get no melee penalty, meaning that they can actually hit things without getting hit. And with that kind of speed, it's really easy to abuse. And they also do a really good amount of damage. These units are the backbone of most Cove non-Jeebus gameplay, okay? In Jeebus you end up going for like other things, like Nim straight into Picket, Nim straight into Hives, Seaman into a console or something like that, okay? But like in 6LM10A, HUD on 1, those type of slower templates, where you can't just pop off with a few creature banks, Corsairs are the actual backbone of their entire gameplay, and they feel really good to use on your main, on your side hero, and so on. I say they are S tier. Really good step up from Pirates. They get everything that they need to get. Wonderful units. Great looking, great feeling, and overall very nice. Next up is we have the third upgrade of the Pirate. Yes, these units are very unique as they are the only unit in the game that has multiple upgrades, not only one. And Sea Dog is actually a really big step up compared to Corsair. Okay, they get Accurate Shot. Accurate Shot makes them it's basically like Mighty Gorgon's Death Stare, but instead of being 10% per unit, it's actually 3% per unit. If you get a good enough stack of these, you can actually just farm any exotic dragons, okay? Ace Dragon, down. Crystal Dragon, down. Just like that, okay? So they're really abusable in certain situations. They also get more speed, making their already good abilities easier to use, and they also get more shots, making them more of a range unit. However, they are ludicrously expensive, okay? To upgrade for Pirates to Corsairs, you only need like a few K gold and some wood, okay? That's it. You have Corsairs now. Really big step up. But to step up from Corsairs into Sea Dogs, you need to pay a ludicrous amount of resources. 5 of all resources and quite a bit of gold. The actual upgrading of the units is also really expensive. And despite them being quite a bit better than, Corsairs, I would actually say that the upgrade is not worth it. Unless you're specifically looking to do a fight with some big exotic dragons, then you're better off staying on Corsairs most of the times, okay? That upgrade is ludicrously expensive. So that's why, despite them of course being better than Corsairs, the fact that there is, the upgrade is so expensive, I would actually put them below Corsairs for, cost effectiveness, value, and usability. Next up is we have the Flies. These guys are so good! oh my god, whenever you get them on a side hero on another faction, you're so happy to get at least a few flies. These guys immediately into the game make every single one of your heroes move so fast. They also have a really good ability. They're able to dispel, and they can actually dispel anti-magic, okay? So let's say your opponent ends up going into the battle, and he has his Archangel stack, okay? And then he anti-magics it, and he's like, yeah boy, nobody can do anything to me. And Fly just goes in there and dispels it, and then you just kabow him with an implosion. It's really tons of fun. These guys are an absolute threat. Super big threat even in the late game. Super good utility in the early game. These guys are amazing. Solid A tier plus. And the Dragonflies is if you took the Serpentfly and just made it even more nuts. They're so good. Speed 14. They make every single hero be max movement. They can go across the battlefield in a single turn to immediately get rid of any buffs that your opponent might have. They are an absolute threat. Very, very big threat. They're even faster than an angel. How wonderful is that? Gives you speed superiority, super good utility. They are S+, okay? They are here. They belong here. They're like one of the best units in the game, really. Next up is we have the Rampart tier 3 units. First off is the Elves. Elves are very generic. They're pretty basic. They're like archers, but with like a little bit more speed and damage and stats. I'd say they're C tier. They don't do anything special. They're not bad. They're not good. They are kind of whatever. But the Grand Elves, they shoot twice. They're super fast. They're amazing to use. And best of all, they're great looking. Okay? Feeling these, you know, these Grand Elves feel really grand and royal to actually use in a game as well. They are super, super wonderful. They are my personal favorite tier 3 unit, alongside Crusaeus. I would put them above though, because they're more usable, because of their better build path, and they are more versatile. They're used not only in H3DM1, 610A, those kind of templates, they're also used in Jeebus as well. More so than the Crusaeus are. So yeah, super wonderful, great units. Grand Elves are one of my favorite power stacks in the game, for early game of course. Next up is we have the Castle tier 3 unit, okay? These guys make no sense, okay? You know, how do you get a tier 3 unit in Heroes of Might and Magic 3? Usually, you start the game, and you just build a tier 3 unit dwelling, okay? But how would you build a Griffin? You would start the game, you would have to skip out on Marksman upgrade, you would have to go Blacksmith, you would have to go Barracks, and only then could you build a tier 3 unit Griffin. And by that point, by like day 4, who cares about some 25 HP unit that actually does nothing else apart from being 25 HP? The fact that they have unlimited retiles also like literally doesn't matter, because they don't do any damage. Wow, I retaliated an extra time for actually no damage. Let's go. Value. No, these guys suck. Their build path sucks. They're not really good utility. They're too hard to get. Like almost everything about them is very horrible. So there they are. D tier. Absolute garbage. Next up is the Royal Griffin. Now, to upgrade these guys, if you were to actually go for Griffins and then upgrade these, you should get a pretty good bonus. Unlimited retiles is a little bit better, but then again, it doesn't really matter because they don't really function in that kind of way that it would be a very useful feature for them to have. The only times I go for this is when I'm playing Castle, okay? I use my Marksman early to get like a box, I get experience, and that experience gets me to either Expert Haste or Expert Slow. With that, you can take Pickets. And that's really, really good. Except, wait a minute. Castle doesn't have any speed 8 or above unit to actually start the fight to be able to cast first. The Wolfies will destroy your entire army in the Picket before you get to do anything. And that's horrible. And one of the ways to overcome that is to actually go for Royal Griffins. I mean, if you can afford the Angel, then sure, 1 on 6. You still started the map like pretty late by that point. But, you know, it's acceptable. So sometimes you actually have to go for Royal Griffin out of necessity for a speedy unit. But even then, you're like cringing really hard when you're doing that. These guys are abysmal. They're not really good. I would put them... The upgrade makes them like at least usable, you know? There's a use case where you could where you would be like, damn, I would really like a Royal Griffin. But there's almost no use case when you really want a Griffin. So yeah, Royal Griffin C tier, Griffin D tier. There we go. Next up is the Inferno units, the Cerberus. These guys, I really like these guys actually. There's pieces 7 right off the bat, so they're pretty good utility for your side heroes to have. They actually do decent damage, especially when you bless them. They're not that bad. But they're held back by one thing also. Pretty similar to Royal Griffins, but not as bad. You never build them. You just never build them, okay? The backbone of Inferno army is Ifritis. You want to rush Ifritis as soon as possible. Those are your core units. The thing that is going to be clearing the entire map, the thing that is going to get you going. Ifritis is the go-to thing on Inferno. And Cerberus is not in the build path of Ifriti. And by the time you get Ifriti, you don't really want to go back for dogs either. The use case for these guys is when you go demon farming, you just buy them for more demons. Which is pretty sad. Pretty good units, but really low usability. They're nothing special. I would put them alongside Beholders. They're kind of things that you get sometimes, a little bit of, and you're happy to like use them for a little bit, but they're, you know, nothing special. Cerberus! It's really, really sad. I look at Cerberus, I see so much potential. They're really cool. They have a unique ability. They're actually strong. They're good. But you never use them. I'm very sad to see. Talking about them, I really just want to go, queue up a game, play Fiona Inferno, build a super dog power stack. There's some games when I end up getting a dog box and I do commit to a dog playstyle. Whenever I do, I'm almost never disappointed. These units deliver, okay? They actually do. They're really, really cool. I like them. Despite them being very rarely used, I still like them. And I think they're strong enough to be in A tier. There we go. Next up is the Water Elemental. Now, these guys are a menace, really, really strong in only one case scenario. Let me tell you. Whenever you go into a side town, okay, you're starting in your Jeepers Cross biome, or maybe on some other template, whatever, and you have like a small side squad going to take castle for you, and then you encounter a conflict city, and that conflict city has a guard of water elementals, okay? Now these guys will destroy you. That's the hardest item to take. I die in these like all the time. But when a player actually uses them, they're absolute unusable. They're clunky because they're 2 hacks, they're pretty hard to use, they're not that fast, they don't do any damage. The only notable feature is that they're really, really tanky. But tankiness alone does not get you high in the list. And that's why I really dislike these units. They are pretty garbage, but they're pretty easy to access, and you know, they do provide kind of for you. If you have like Storm Allies, they're pretty good at guarding them. I'll put them at C tier. Next up is the Ice Elemental. What if your Water Elemental was actually a shooter? Wow! Now you can do 0 damage from afar! Thank you! Thank you, I love this upgrade. I would say they're worse than Water Elemental. So, yeah. I really hate using these units, okay? Doing no damage, I mean, guarding these 2x shooters is like a real big problem. That means they always get covered up. That means they actually do like have the damage of a Water Elemental in most scenarios. They don't look good. They don't feel good to play. They are, nah, I dislike them. Next up is the Stone Golem. Now, Stone Golems actually provide a lot of value for Tower. If Tower didn't have golems, they would actually be a way worse faction. If you get like Josephine, you're really happy to get a bunch of golems. They can tank highs, they tank for your gremlins really well. They accomplish a very important role in Tower. So I would actually say they're B tier. No, actually, the Stone Golems are C tier, but like pretty high C tier. I kind of like these guys. They're not as bad as you would initially think they are. Of course, whenever you encounter them all out on the field, you're like, hell yeah, free experience. Of course, that's naturally the reaction. But to actually use them in Tower, they're okay. They don't feel terrible. Of course, apart from making your hero slow, so you have to like macromanage that quite a bit. But still, it is worth it. And if you upgrade them to Steel Golems, these guys are pretty strong. They're really strong, really tanky. They do exactly what you would expect them to do, and they do it well. They are B tier, in my opinion. Next up is we have the Mummy. These guys are sometimes surprisingly hard. I see them usually as a unit that I can take out immediately into the match. Like a horde of them, no problem. Get some Grandels, let's go. But I sometimes actually underestimate them and lose to them. Their curse ability can be pretty annoying because these are the kind of units that you take in the early game. Yes. And because of that, you have an early game army. And early game armies usually consist of a high number of low tier units, and Curse is very effective at destroying that. And because of that, their ability can be pretty scary at times. So you have to kite them, you have to make sure you're not really getting hit. So they do require like a tiny little bit of effort to take, but they still like really suck as units. They're slow, they have like almost nothing special going their way. And yeah, they're kind of free experience. Reminds me of another unit. Say hello to your best friend Griffin. Nomads! These guys have a really cool special ability. They make you have no terrain penalty on the desert. You have just one of these on your army, and you have no desert penalty. Pretty good. Requires quite a bit of macro management, but if you can find like a tent or a refuge camp of these, they actually provide you with a pretty decent amount of value. They're also like decently fast, with speed 7, they have a decent amount of HP, 30 HP, and they don't deal a lot of damage, but their utility and tankiness kind of makes them into a pretty decent usable unit. I don't dislike these at all, and they're not a pushover out in the open as well. At least not as much as some of these other creatures. I put them solidly in the B tier. Somewhere here. Let's go. Next up is the Orc. Now these guys. Remember Lizardmen from tier 2? Okay. What if we had Lizardmen, but made them more expensive, harder to build, and actually gave them less stats anyway? Wow! You're abysmal. You belong in B tier. I mean D tier. If I made a new tier, then the only ones to fall even down no further would be the Orcs. But luckily for them, there's not a low there. Next up, wait, these are actually the Orc Chieftains, sorry. Okay, so next are the Orc Chieftains. They are a little bit better in stats. They actually have a decent HP pool for a range unit, but they have like you never upgrade them. Imagine, you have to build a blacksmith to upgrade them. On Stronghold, really? No! Hell no, I'm not gonna build a blacksmith to upgrade my super garbage unit into a slightly less garbage unit. So they belong alongside their brothers in the D tier. Almost unusable. Next up is the Whites. Whites are slow. They're not really... Well, then again, there's a use case for these as well. Whenever you get on some Whites from your side hero, or maybe, you know, your Necro, so you just got Whites naturally, you want to send them out on the roads and they can do some small fights on their own by using the regeneration ability. You just click space furiously, and they go full washing machine mode and will never die. And that is a really, really cool way to use them. And if you use them in such a way, they can actually accomplish like pretty great things for you. With that in mind, they have a decent use case. And because of that, I would put them at least in C tier. They're decent. They're good. They're okay. They feel kind of nice to use whenever you get to actually use them. They're pretty notably good with Septiana's Death Ripple. Because if you have Septiana as a starting hero, you know, you got her in a tab after picking a girlfriend, if you can share Death Ripple to many mage heroes and then give them like one white, you can actually clear mines, clear some treasures, and so on. Actually really useful. In a recent mirror game, I used Septiana like this to like get boots of speed on like one white side hero for me. That's really good value. Not having to change the army somewhere far for like some objective and being able to just abuse them like that is really, really powerful. Very cool unit. Would recommend. Next up is the White. So they're like their unupgraded counterpart, but they get one extra ability. They can destroy opponent's mana, and you can mana bomb the opponent by having many wraiths, 1 stacks on a side hero. You just go fight them, and they just suck the entire mana out of the opponent. That's actually pretty powerful and a pretty good way to give you an edge in that final battle if you end up having these. Usually don't build these for that kind of goal, but if you can get them from a box, that's a pretty good way to use them. They also are pretty annoying to fight out in the open because you of course want to keep your mana, but these guys are like, no. Because of that, I would actually give them a pretty decent rating. They're A tier. Not to be built, but to be used whenever you get them. They are powerful and influential in the game. Really cool solid units. So this is my tier 3 creatures tier list for Heroes of Might and Magic 3 Horn of the Abyss. Let me know what you think. Maybe you'll love some units over others. You know, let me know where you would have placed them as well. catch me live on Twitch. I stream every day, twitch.tv/Lekshav. Almost every day. So, yeah. Bye-bye. Till next time. Tomorrow, of course, we go over tier 4 units. Till then,